Naremaka Saranina Megasitiki. Welcome, Saranameka Saranina Megasikinaka. Welcome to this wonderful day. Saradake Saranina Meka. And finally, spring. Well, in the northern hemisphere, that is. Saranameka Saranina Megasiki. Einameka Saradikinia Meka. May you really welcome Soradabeka Saranina Meka, all that which has been waiting for you to receive. Soradabeka Saranina Meka, in whichever form it comes, you know? Soradabeka Saranina Meka Siki. Just want to really take up this space right now before we get into the messages that are coming through to just cleanse the energy. Because, I mean, can we really say, like, whoa, what in the world just happened? I'm not sure about you, but there's a lot of my sisters and brothers that they were feeling, like, really intense, and some of my clients too, really intense emotions. And this is something that I was tuning in into the energies of, like, what is it that is in our best interest to share with everybody else that is happening, you know? So here it is. So let's cleanse the energies first. For you to feel back into what it is, your center. Which is always there. Much better, much better. So there's so many things that have been happening, and it's almost like sometimes somebody told me, like, that's just like just a thing. You know, it always happens. And the thing is that it always happens because we're constantly growing, right? And even when we believe that it's not happening, it's actually happening, but then it's really being seen in tension around our life in the outside world, because our system is trying to get our attention, because it's been really saying or sending messages, signals for you to pay, for us to pay attention, right? And at times, like, we can be so stubborn, you know, let's be honest. At times we can be so stubborn and we don't really see it because we believe what is best for us at those moments in times. And so, like, we just decide, like, well, I'm just going to stick with this, and then creating more suffering. What I mean about suffering is not just like, not really going into the emotional sense of, like, somebody's harming you, but in the fact of going against yourself, not really listening to your intuition and the guidance that's coming through. This is what I mean about suffering. So not really being into your centeredness, okay? So today, as I was getting ready, I was, like, really tuning in into the energies, and, like, why was it that right before leading into the full moon and also into the spring equinox, or the equinox in general, you know, it just, like, brought up so much tension and so many things to work through. And coming into the spring equinox, what the messages were coming through was that, like, well, you know, the spring equinox is when you really put the seeds in there, you start to plant, right? So when we're really talking about in the physical world, in our planet, when farmers, and even before, they started to plant, but this is more like the time where we plant seeds, where we're nurtured, where we're giving love into something that will come into life to nurture us back, right? And so it's a very similar thing that happens inside our systems, that in order for you to plant the seeds, something has to be moved. You know, and some kind of, like, disruption has to happen within the system for your own earth, your physical body, to be prepared for all these seeds that you had in your mind, in your field. They're now are ready to come into this physical realm, right? Because everything is already in the energetics, but they have to come through somehow to really be planted here and manifested in this realm. And so this is what was happening. You know, at times the disruption is really seen as, like, why is this happening? You know, or there's too much going on with the emotions. There's so much going on with the sensations. And then there's also, the mind can go into, like, what am I doing wrong? Or what's going on, right? Rather than seeing it into the opposite aspect of, like, well, you know, you're in a constant growing mode, you know, so especially in this journey, when you have committed to yourself and your own truth and your own experiences in whichever way, like, you have chosen to do it, then something inside of you, whenever things do not resonate with you any longer, or not vibrating at the same level that you currently are, or that you're actually heading to, okay? So this is like the part of the equinox, so that the system itself knows exactly, because it's so intelligent. I get so fascinated with this. I'm such a nerd about it. But so, like, your system itself knows, you know, It's fully aware of every single vibration that you have. And so whenever you have chosen, to go into, let's go to point B, right? Whatever level it is of awareness, and you're like really, you have been striving and working towards that level of awareness, then it knows exactly that for you to get to that point of awareness, there is something that has to be worked through in your actual physical body. And of course, everything is interconnected. So in the emotional body, in the mental body, in your aura, in your mind, so then it goes like, okay, well, now that this is really coming into fruition, because what is happening is like something that you really have been wanting to bring into this existence, is ready. So it's kind of like, in the womb of a mother, right? So when the baby is actually ready to come, it comes, right? So think about your baby as your manifestation, right? So in the energetics, it's been really processing. It's been getting stronger and stronger. The vibrations of that, in order for to come into this planet, into this field of existence, then has to be ready. So it's been there getting ready. And now when it's really ready to actually come and be manifested through you into this 3D world, then it has to come through some kind of, what I'm seeing is like a tunnel, it comes like a tunnel, like a channel. It comes through here. And now this is the time where your system knows exactly what needs to exit in order to make space for that. Because this manifestation that you've been asking for, that you've been tuning into, so this manifestation itself has a different vibration than some parts in your physical body. There's some parts in your entire being as a whole. So because of that, imagine the pull, right? The pull and push, really. So something has to get out that is not, or integrated, let's call it this way, that is not vibrating at the level that this is vibrating. Because then it will be too much tension, and then it will really allow this space to really come through in the most gentle and divine way. So then as it's coming through, then the system knows exactly what it is to move around and create this disruption. Okay, so this is a lot of things when it's being seen as like very emotional state, very depressive state. At times it could also be like super blissed out, that you're like somewhere out in the clouds and not really fully grounded here on your feet. And so this is what really happens, one of the things that happens anyway, because there's many other things that happens in the energetics in your system. And so as this is coming through, your manifestation is getting ready, and this is coming through into your system because of what you had set out into the universe, your manifestation, your intentions. And so there it comes the moment where everything bubbles up to the surface. And this everything that bubbles up, again, is something that is vibrating lower into the vibration that you're going to. Because as this manifestation comes through, let's just call it your baby, it's a little easier. As your baby comes through and it's rooted into your system, it's elevating you. It's elevating your vibrations, because that part of you is in a way higher, okay? Higher vibrations. That doesn't mean that it's better. It's just higher vibrations. So it's coming through the higher vibration, and it's pushing something out of your system in order for that to rise up, to be integrated, so this can actually fully root in your system. So now this is one of the reasons why the past week has been like very like, like as I said at the beginning of the video, I had like some brothers and sisters going through that, as well as some clients, myself included, so it's been really happening, especially the more that we continue to elevate ourselves more and more and really tune in into our truth. Sometimes it doesn't happen as often as it does at the beginning of the journey, but it can happen that it could be like really intense for like just a short period of time. And this intensity, this disruption, is actually something really beautiful and really powerful for us to experience. But again, there's the condition, and of course, emotions can run really deep depending on what your story has been in this existence. So as you're coming in through this, you know, and all in the stories that you have had, you know, it could actually have a very intense psychological effect in what it is that is happening in you, and what it is that you're cultivating in you. So here's a time to like really honor, you know, honor your emotions, you know, and really be with them. Really be with them, and having like opening up the throat and giving the throat that space to say like, I need help, or maybe I'm cool, I can do this, you know. Because again, it's especially, you know, as like we were moving from the full moon into the spring equinox, and here, you know, it's like, imagine the spring equinox just like a portal, okay? And anything that is going to pass through into a newer version of yourself, a more empowered version of yourself, will come through. But anything that does not resonate and vibrate with that new version of yourself will shed, you know, in the way of integrating. And so here, whenever you're clashing, you know, with your own emotions, perhaps not necessarily, but one of the reasons could be that you're just kind of like wishing that you were somewhere else, right? Wishing that you could feel something differently. And totally, I get it, because I've also gone through that. You know, sometimes emotions could be really intense. But one of the messages that I received today, this morning, as I was meditating, it was that to begin to see that differently. Now, because especially when emotions run very deep, when emotions are just like sometimes come into that space and make you feel like freeze, and you don't even know what to do, you know, it's really because they have such a big message that they are trying and willing to send to you, but you're not open to receive the message because you're so caught up into the emotional state that in the emotional state it could be a little bit challenging to go into the centerness, you know, when you're going through the roller coasters of emotions, that it could be really challenging to be like, okay, tell me the message, you know, because it's just like, it's a little too much, right? So on those moments, you know, it's really thinking about, why are you in that space, right? And of course, you're always where you're meant to be. So in that space, just like honor that perhaps at the moment you're meant to feel all those things, you know? Perhaps at the moment, like, it will feel really sucky, but nothing lasts forever. And in the suckiness, maybe you can even put a little seed of gratitude right there. Like, thank you for feeling sucky. as funky as that sounds, you know? And really having your sticky note around, like saying like, well, this is happening for a reason, for me to continue to empower myself, and opening up the space for these emotions to speak, you know? Because again, one of the things that my guides were saying, it's not that it's just like some kind of message, but some really big teachings, especially when the emotions run very deep, you know? And here comes, like, I have so much compassion for anybody that has ever suffered from depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and tendencies. And if you're going through that too, have so much compassion for you as well, because I myself have gone through that, you know? And all this, like, all these portals of the full moon, and as well of the equinox, has brought so many other things up to the surface for me too, you know? And of course, you know, at times, like, I'm pretty good at saying time out, you know? I'm pretty good at saying, okay, I do need assistance, I do need help, and I reach out. Because the more you get to know your system, the more you know, like, the things that you can actually work through by yourself, with the guidance of the intelligence of your system, of course, you know, and all the tools that you have gathered through your life and lives, and from like your ancestors and etc. Or what you can even tap into the field, you know, and then, you know, as well, your limitations, like what you haven't learned yet in this experience. And when somebody can ask you, somebody actually can assist you with their own gifts, you know. And that is a beautiful thing about really being in tune with your system, because it's not about like suffering, you guys, you know. And like going back into the beginning of the video, what I meant about suffering is like going against yourself, going against your own intuition, going against like your own guidance that creates that tension within your system. And because the system is actually telling you and sending you messages to really get your attention and saying like, hey, we're going against ourselves, you know. If you don't pay attention to that, it's going to be shown outside of you. Because then it really sends signals, since everything is connected and sending signals, so something can in a way shock you for you to pay attention. So here it is again, one of the reasons why all these things were happening was because again, we were coming into the equinox. We're coming into the portal of like transformation of what do you want to move forward to in the way of vibrations, the manifestations that where you're coming through, and as they were rooting into your system, something had to get integrated, something that was not vibrating at the same kind of level where you are heading to. Okay, and now it's time to just receive that. So we're kind of coming into like in the field anyways, there's this part of the field that is coming towards the end of that intensity, because then like the system is already understanding. What I mean by that is like, okay, of course your whole system as a whole already knows, but then the consciousness, the personal consciousness of you is getting tuned in into that. And as it gets tuned in into that, like the tension that was created in the form of emotions, or the tension that was created in the form of thought patterns, or limited beliefs, etc., are settling down a little bit, so like it's not as intense as it was once, because when we come into these portals, the intensity, what we see, what we perceive as intensity and emotions really rise up, because it's getting, imagine like your system that has like this cauldron at the center, right? And so the more that we come closer into these portals, the hotter it gets. So I'm sure that all of you have like put some hot water to boil, or making some soup, right? So the beginning, the water it might be cold, might be a little bit cold until it gets to warm up, and then it starts to heat up and it starts to bubble up, right? So, okay, these bubbles, okay, these are the bubbles that like get really strong and strong and strong. The closer that we get to the heat point, which is that portal, whether it was the full moon or the equinox, or even at times it could be the new moon, depending again on what you have set up as intentions for that to come through and help you alchemize something within you. So now think about these bubbles, right? So when you're seeing the soup, I'm just giving you an example, boiling it up, right? It goes like this, right? Like the bubbles explode and explode and explode. So this is exactly what is happening, or what had been happening within the system, right? All these things are coming up to the surface really strongly because they need to be alchemized, and you're using your own energies, you're using your own elements in order to alchemize all these bubbling sensations. And at times, this popping sensations of the bubbles can actually be an emotion, It can actually be the emotions. It can actually be some kind of memories, And at times, like depending on the emotion, then because they're just exploding, that if we're not in the centerness, then it can totally explode out of us and into somebody else, projected into somebody else, And in a way, that's it's okay. It's normal, but at the same time, we have to be very cautious. We don't want to harm ourselves even more. We don't want to harm somebody else. And it's meant to be like an opening of communication, a deeper communication of how you can really, the throat, again, how you can express to somebody else like what you're going through, even if you don't understand, just like, I'm going through something really deep, I don't even know, and I'm trying, like not to like project it onto you, but at times it might happen, and I apologize, because we're working through something so deep. And now because, this cauldron at the center of your being, it's always really there, And I'm just giving you a visual of a cauldron so you can have some kind of imagination, okay? A visualization to help you understand this. So this cauldron over here it's really always within your system. And it is the one thing that helps to alchemize all these things that are coming up to the surface, right? But if we don't really know about that, how would you know? If you don't really know that that's the boiling thing that happens most of the time prior or getting closer to a portal, then how would you know to really like, in a way, like be okay with the emotions, right? In a way to understand them. But so understand that this alchemy already happens within you without the personal consciousness knowing it, because your system as a whole, again, super intelligent, it knows when to do these things. And most of the time this is happening when there's like I'm talking about the really big boiling sensations, okay? These things normally happen when there's something so big that you have asked for, you know, so a really big manifestation, a really big shift in your life, something that you have been calling upon, and then your system as a whole knows that it can hold those vibrations now. So this is why one of the things that comes as a manifestation roots into your system, the bubbly sensation, the boiling sensation begins to get faster and faster and faster, because it's helping you root to this manifestation, this new energy into your system. And the faster this boils, the faster that can root. But at times, you know, it can create, in a way, some kind of like explosion, because the faster it boils, you know, and then you don't really know how to tune in into the emotions and listen to their teachings, that it can just rise up so much, then you're just like, wow, you know, so like, be aware that the alchemy already happens within you, okay? This cauldron thing is already there. And when these things explode out of you, in whichever way it is, you know, whether it's by a scream, by a dance, by crying, sometimes literally out of bliss too, you know, it's not just like what we tend to see as negative emotions. Just when something is really intense in you, just know that it's because the alchemy that is happening within your system is like going really fast. And it's going really fast again because it's making space for this new vibration to come in. Because the more that is slowed down, the slow this comes into you too. And at times when we're like super ready for something, it just goes like, and this whole thing goes exploding and alchemize, you know? So now tuning in into these emotions, okay? So when the emotions run really deep in you, when you have a story of something else, and then you continue to elevate yourself, it can bring up so many things of the surface that in a way you haven't really integrated fully, okay? So this is where I mean about really being mindful and taking care of you, especially if you have had a history of very intense psychological aid, you know? And I'm totally saying this to you guys because I've also gone through that, and I know that experience, and I know how difficult it could be, but I also at the same time I know that it's happening for the greater good of not just me or you, had you been experiencing that, but also for all of us, okay? And the thing about when these emotions really like come up to the surface so strongly is to remember to breathe. Remember to breathe, and remember that you have your guides all around you. You have your guides all around you, and they're really sending you messages, and they're really holding space for you. And we have this amazing team around us at all times, and they're there for a reason, you know? When I got to my most challenging moments in this bubbling, in this alchemy thing that I was sharing with you, I still hear them. I don't cut off the communication with them, you know, because I know they're there for me. I know I have chosen them for a particular reason because of their gifts to guide me in this experience. Like the same thing with you. Your guides are there because you chose them and you gave them permission, because not only you are like this with your guides, okay, in some kind of other realm, you know each other very well, and they have different tools to help you as you come into this experiences, especially this bubbling experiences that come up and just burst, okay? Now, what I'm hearing right now is this burst sensation doesn't necessarily need to be something explosive out of you, okay? But also it could be creation. How beautiful is this? It could be creation in the form that as these emotions rise up and they're very intense, you have the options, right? You always have options. You have the option to really feel sorry for yourself, you know? And there's a difference on feeling the really deep emotions, whichever way they go, whether it is in the ones that we see as negative or as positive, you know? or so there's a difference with feeling them. And then there's also a difference of like just allowing yourself to like really go super deep into the spiral and not knowing how to get out of that. That's what I mean about like feeling sorry for yourself, going into the victim mentality and all these kinds of things. Okay. And then you have the option of doing something else to help you alchemize the energy. And it's totally understandable that depending on what it is that is coming up and being alchemized in your system, it could really be challenging. Okay, this is where you really tune in into your inner strength. This is where you really tune in into your guides and say, freaking help me. Just help me. Okay. And then you can do something else, little by little, okay, doing something else to help you alchemize the energy. Now coming into the part of like the explosion of creation, creation, there's many poets out there, and there's also many painters and many singers that really like tune in into their creativity when they're suffering. And they create the most beautiful songs, the most beautiful paintings, the most beautiful dances, because they use that energy, they use their emotions to really express themselves, or just to channel something, because we're constantly channeling, and you have the option right there in any moment in your life. Doesn't matter if you're feeling anxious or if you're feeling super blissful, you have the options to really channel something really beautiful and powerful. Okay, so in those moments you also have the choice that you can channel something, that you can really tune in into some really deep emotion, even if it's just like sometimes like some kind of memory or some kind of emotion really just like hits you like and it's just like at the core of your being. It's just kind of like, oh my gosh, this sucks, right? But that sucky feeling can be placed into words. That sucky feeling can be placed into a dance. That sucky feeling can be placed into some kind of canvas and really create something so powerful for you to alchemize the energy. This is the process of alchemizing, that you can help your own system as it's helping you to really tune in into that. And then, and then you'll be super surprised, Last night you were talking about that. Wow, that's wonderful. Yes, it can definitely help. It definitely helps, because now, as these things are, imagine just in a very slow version, okay? If you just recorded your soup, because this is the example that I was giving, okay? As it's boiling it up, right? And you're just repeating or rewatching this video in a super slow motion, and then the bubbles, rather than going like and bursting up, right? Then you can see it so slowly coming into the point that it just bursts, and the burst is like so gentle, right? Okay, so that specific motion you can also create as you are alchemizing the energies too with your own system. And this is that process. Rather than going like this, you can slow it down in a way and make it more gentle as you use that energy to create something, okay? And so rather than being super destructive, it's actually creating it, right? Creation and destruction. You can use those two energies and merge it at the center to help you as you're doing this alchemy process. Yeah, some of the best life songs come from a broken heart. Love songs come from a broken heart. Yeah, so true. It's so true. So, like there's, like as I was saying, all these portals of the full moon and the equinox, like brought up so many things, there's so much alchemy that is happening within you. And it's not that it's only these portals that happen, okay? But these portals really bring so much energy and so much strength and so many new vibrations. Again, as something is coming into your system, it's rooting some new vibrations. And that's why it can be like, poof, okay? But there's always that alchemy happening within your system. And you can tune in into that. This is where your inner fire comes in, tuning into more into your soul. This is how like your own water coming in, tuning in more into your blood and the circulation of you can help you tune in into more of these things, and it's just opening up the communication, truly opening up the communication. And like sometimes my clients are like, it's so hard, and it's like, Well, if you go with a mentality that is so hard to tune in into that communication, of course it's gonna be hard, you know, because you already put it into your mind that it's gonna be hard to connect with some kind of language within your system. But in reality, it's your system, so you know already all the communications of everything, and all you have to do is just be like, okay, I'm ready. Let's talk. Let's do this. You know, like use it in a way that is more fun. Because, yes, this process, you know, is definitely super challenging at times, but it doesn't need to be sucky. It can really be very beautiful and very very creative and very magical if you allow it to be, okay? If you allow it to be. So again, always going back into like it's your system. So every single communication that happens within you, you already know it. Every single language that happens within you, you already know it. You already speak the language. It's also just like being into letting go of the idea, you know, that it's something so out there. And of course, you know, like perhaps many of you did not grow up with that kind of mentality of tuning into your energies and stuff. I didn't either. But then I got very curious, you know? This is where curiosity can help you too. Just be very curious of your being, very, very curious of your abilities, and just open up. Open up rather than having this thing in your head of like, this is the way that it should be, you know? Just being like, okay, I welcome it in whichever way it comes. And see, this is also what it means to be going with the flow of your own being or your own elements. And then now, like what I hear right now, I said, as we're coming into like the new realm in a way of the new version of you, you know, it's very important to just, of course, take care of yourself, but be in tune with everything that you've been asking for, right? Because this is also like a baby. Every single manifestation that you have been saying and asking for and declaring is like a little baby energetically that is coming into your system. So welcome that being, because it is a being. Welcome that being and be grateful for it. And of course, like when something comes and when you give birth to something, there's many changes, right? So I'm not like a human mother yet, but you know, like I can imagine having my puppy that like it just created so many shifts in my life, and I had to make arrangements and do things very differently to take care of this little being, right? So changes come with really big manifestations. Changes come, and you have to be able to be in that flow, you know, to not be so set into like this is how it's going to be, but just like being like, okay, how can I allow myself to be flexible? Yeah, how can you allow yourself to be flexible? And sometimes we need that disruption in order to find what is actually meant to be here, you know. And the disruption is not something negative. It's something that is like the moving of the energy. It's the alchemy that is happening within you. But again, at times we can see that as a disruption that is just creating so much tension, and it's just like, no, it's a big no, right? So shift your vision. Open up a different perspective, or be open to the idea of a different perspective. So then the disruption is a gift. Then the disruption is like, oh, wonderful. Now what can I see differently? What can you show me differently? You know? And then things shift more gentle, and things shift quickly. Because then you're not tense. Imagine if like you're so tense. Imagine if like we're talking about this cauldron, right? Imagine if there is not really like so much air around, and it is just like suffocating in this little cave within you, right? So it will create more tension with all the heat and with all this I almost said it in Spanish. With all this, in a way, fog, you know, it's going to create so much and eventually go explode. So this is what happens. One of the things that happens when we're so tense, when we're so tense in this alchemy process, you're so tense and you're just creating this little like cave, and at the center of the cave there's this cauldron that it just is pulsating. It's just like creating more heat and creating more smoke, and it's just like eventually going to a point of being kind of like a volcano, right? So you want to let that be. You want it to let it to be more easy for yourself rather than being explosive, okay? because explosive can definitely help you with some things, but it could also bring up more challenges. And as it is, the journey into the awakening process, your Kundalini awakening, it already brings a lot of challenges. So you don't really need to put more challenges into it. It's just learning to just be more gentle with it, to understand in a way how your process unfolds, to understand the language of your being, and to go with it. So, yeah. And there's something else coming. Okay, and this is all coming because of your heart, you guys. This is all coming because you're so ready to feel a deeper love within yourself. Because it has nothing to do with anything that you see outside of you, but inside, okay? You're so ready to tune in into that deep unconditional love because it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, okay? Because it's just imagine like the surface, right? At times, depending on the journey, or if you're being in ceremony, you can like tune in a little bit into that, and then you can come out, right? But the journey is also going inwards more and tapping into that unconditional love even more and more and more and more. Because in a way, there's so many levels of love, And even honestly, at times when I feel love, like it's undescribable, more and more and more as I continue to grow, because there's no description with speech about like the depth of a really deep unconditional love, so you're tuning in more into that, more and more into that. And this is all about your heart, this is all about your experience, and also this is all about learning to communicate from the space of the heart, really speaking up your needs, speaking up your boundaries, making yourself safe, as you continue to unfold this, because it's all happening. You're blooming, right? Think about spring. You're blooming. You're coming into more bloom. We're so connected with those, with the seasons. When we work with the seasons, things can actually be a little more gentle. So the more that you're blooming, it could feel like an explosion at times, but it's an explosion of life. Again, if you use the alchemy, your own alchemy, and work with it rather than colliding, right? And this will help you also. The more that you tune in into that, into yourself, and do that with yourself, it helps you more with others as well, with other relationships. It doesn't even matter if it's a romantic or not, or friendship, just relationship, even relationship with nature, even relationship with animals, with any kind of relationship like that, with your guides as well. The more you go in, the more you tune in into your love, the more you open up the channels energetically to really hear your guides even clearer. And this is something that you've been working through, Like, know that, like, the cauldron and all this bubbling things up to the surface, they will happen. They're constantly happening. But, like, what you can learn is really to soften up with that, to help yourself as you're going through this process, Not just to wait around and watch the cauldron explode and, oh, that's cool. But just to be, like, opening up the communication, like talking to it. How can I assist you to make this process a little bit more gentle, right? So then, your pure consciousness and the intelligence of your being can work hand in hand with your personal consciousness. And what a wonderful way of really opening up this communication with yourself, that is already there, right? So tune in into that space. Allow these gifts, these manifestations, these babies, they're coming through. Welcome them, and just be grateful for them. And also know that, some changes might happen. Might be super big or might be very small, but they will happen. And be ready for that change, right? There's something that we're constantly doing, and that's change. We're constantly shifting. And when we learn to be okay with a shift in this experience, in this 3D world, it's because we have learned to be okay with our shift within ourselves. And it's something that just naturally happens. So learning to be okay with it. I was just making sure my puppy's okay. He's sleeping on my feet. So as you continue to go into this process, just tune in more into your inner alchemy, because it's there, If you like some assistance with that, that's also one of my really strong points, because I've done it for myself, and this is what I help others, my clients. And maybe for you it would just be like poof, you just enter like that and you know it all. Or maybe you just need some assistance. But whatever it is, your communication is already happening. That language is already yours. And you just need to tap into that. Maybe like move some things around energetically to really be in full communication with that part of your being and understand it. It's really wonderful when you get into that space, because then, even if at times you might feel lonely, that you're not. It's just something that is coming up to the surface to release those tendencies, and also release the stories in the head that you're alone, because we're never alone. And I've said this many times, there's so many beings around here, especially in my room. I'm sure there's many beings around you too as well. This is how things get channeled, We tune in into some kind of different vibrations. Sometimes we'll listen to some angels, sometimes we'll listen to another being, sometimes we listen to Mother Earth, sometimes we listen to a puppy, and those energies just come through because they're meant to come through for a reason. They're meant to have this kind of like bridge between one being and another being, so then the other being can really activate something within themselves, some kind of remembrance, some kind of language, because the language is also yours. Connecting with nature is also yours, the language of the elements is also yours. Just, in the history of humanity, we have forgotten about that. But it doesn't mean that it never existed, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist within you. And here's another thing that is coming through before I leave. There's this thing about, there's so many things happening, right? Especially in these things moving from the male energy to the female energy and trying to find the balance of it, or finding the balance, I must say. His story. Like history, like his story. This is the English version, okay? His story. And there's many people that say like, yeah, and this is because the patriarchal, right? The like male dominant society. Now let me give you the version in Spanish. La historia is feminine. La historia is feminine. And it doesn't say her story, it says the story. The story as a whole is feminine. In Italian it's also feminine. In French it's also feminine. I'm sure maybe Amelia can tell us, in Portuguese it might also be feminine. And here's the balance, And it's not just about pointing fingers into like, oh, this is the way that they're doing it because, it's a male dominant society. But what about the other languages? What about the other languages? La historia as a whole, is telling you that it's feminine. So when I was tuning into that, because I did a podcast with an amazing sister and this came up, it's not just one way or the other, but there's always those two sides. And we can see that in languages. Maybe English is spoken like way more than Spanish, but there's a lot of people that speak Spanish, And we don't forget the la historia is feminine. And we've never said like, oh, why is the la historia, But the history, for some reason, in English, is pointing fingers, right? And that is separation. Pointing fingers, that is separation. And however it happened, who knows? I have no idea. If you know, let me know. How it came to be like his story, But the thing is to see things from different perspectives at all times. Because sometimes we can get so tuned in and just like, it's just this way. And we forget other things that could actually help us in the journey. And this is one of them, La historia is also a remembrance that is feminine as well. Just like history, and it's masculine. And without these two energies, we wouldn't be here, right? We're finding the balance of them. And the balance, at least for me, in my story, is not to point fingers. It's to be like, yes, the masculine energy definitely does help. And also the feminine does help. And then when we use those in the most divine way and understand their communication within our being, we can be the centerness. And then we can use those as we wish, because then we know. And it's not creating separation, but it's bringing back the union. Isn't it wonderful? I love languages. I mean, I learned, my first language is Spanish, and I learned Italian as a little kid when I was like 4 years old. I went to an Italian school in Lima, and then I learned English, and then I learned French. And I mean, if I could continue to learn languages, honestly, I would. I definitely want to learn German, because I know they have like a new, they don't only have masculine and feminine, but also neutral, and that like intrigues me very well. So it's a wonderful way also to connect with others in their own native language, because sometimes we miss a lot of the communication because of translation, you know. But so just remember that history and la historia, you know, there's the two of them are there, very present, very, very present. And let's not forget that those two energies are within us, and they're always, have always been in union. So whenever we also choose the union within ourselves, we can choose the union outside of ourselves, and not pointing fingers, you know, just saying like, for some reason we needed that, and for some reason we needed this, and now let's combine this, so there's no more clash, but there's just that embrace of the energies, and then shifting the consciousness in this planet, because as we know, it's definitely needed, right? And it all starts with us as we're doing this work with you, as you continue to tune in into your heart space, as you continue to open up the communication within your system with your own alchemy and understand it, so then you can just do it all in a way, you know. But there's so many things that we continue to learn, and I myself, like I told you, I know when to ask for help. And even at times when if my ego wants to be like, no, we got it, I'm like, no, we don't. Let's just ask for this gift of this other person, because we know that she or him is very gifted at that. And then we continue to learn, you know. And so, yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for your votes for Yoga Warrior. It's definitely been really amazing, and at the same time very challenging too. And so it definitely brought up so many things up to the surface, you know, my inner alchemy. And so the voting continues every day until March 31st, and then, you know, from there it goes into another round. So I really appreciate your votes if you still vote every single day, and share it as well. Like I said, the one that wins gets to be featured in Yoga Journal, and also wins $10,000. And with the $10,000, my plan is to open up a nonprofit organization to help others through their awakening process. Again, especially those that don't have the needs, you know. They're also meant to be helped, because they're really dear brothers and sisters as well that might not even know what to do about their situation and might not have the needs, you know. Who are we to stop help for those that don't have the needs? So, yeah, sending you so much love. Send me a message if you would like me to send you the direct link, or you can click in the link in my bio and Instagram. And it's right there. So, blessings, blessings, blessings. Continue to just welcome all these amazing manifestations. All these babies are coming your way. Have so much gratitude for everything. And, you know, at the same time, like, remember your inner alchemy, okay? You can use that energy to create rather than destroy, especially yourself. And I'm saying this because I definitely destroyed myself many times before. So yeah, you can use this to help you create, okay? Much love, much love. Ciao, peace.